So, welcome to episode number two of Daddy Daughter Talk. Hopefully, you guys got a chance to check out episode one, part one, and part two. If you didn't, please go and check that out. Just that kind of explains what the series is going to be about, and just giving an introduction to myself and my beautiful daughter, Kelsey. Today's topic is well, before I get to today's topic, Kelsey, can you tell the lovely people where they can find you?
But they can find me on Instagram at kway.tv or on YouTube at All Things Kels or Kelsey's Way TV. And all of that will be linked below in the description box. So like open it up and read it because I do write like heartfelt things there. Read that.
Okay, and myself. For the old school Facebookers, you can find me by my name, Chris Dinkins. That's D like David, Inkins. On Instagram, it's just going to be C Dink. I too have a YouTube channel that I need to develop, and that's just C Dink as well. And then, of course, this content is going to be on Daddy Daughter Talk YouTube, right?
Yes, on YouTube. Let us know if you want me to put it on Spotify, iTunes, like the audio version. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. If y'all want to listen to it, like while y'all at work or while y'all in the car or something, let us know and I'll put it there. Also, if for some eyeball reason you can't find our individual channels, if you go to the main page of this YouTube channels, all of them are linked there. They'll always be in the description box. And y'all got any questions or any suggestions, leave them in the comments. Anything personal, hit us in the DMs or email us at ddtthepodcast@gmail.com.
Right. Okay. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into tonight's topic. And tonight's topic is something that everybody goes through, should go through. And you might go through this twice in your life as a child, where Kelsey is right now. Not that she's a child, but she's my child. So, and then she'll go through it again as a parent, or she ought to go through it again as a parent. But tonight's topic is the dreaded sex talk. Exactly. So, how is it that we as parents have this conversation with our children? As parents, how should this conversation go? But then from the child's standpoint, how do you receive this information? How do you express yourself, express your desires to your parents? So again, this is something that everybody goes through, but this is definitely a conversation that is needed before we set our children out into the real world. But more so, what should the conversation entail? What should be included in this conversation? In my experience, and maybe yours as well, old school, I'm a 70s baby, early 70s baby. So as you guys comment and listen to this, I would ask that you go back to your experience as a child and relating to your parents for the sex talk. That's if you had the sex talk. Hopefully you had the sex talk. But as a parent, you will have to have the sex talk with your children, or you should at least have the sex talk with your children. Any input you want to give us or throw in, Kelsey, before we really get started in this?
Let's jump into it. I think you covered the bases.
Okay. So what should we be talking about with our children in the sex talk? What all should be included in the conversation? I can tell you what most people are used to, specifically in our community, where we tell our children the same thing that we were told. Don't come home with no babies. But do we ever tell our children how not to come home with babies? But of course, babies are one side effect of sex. Stop me if I'm wrong, Kelsey. The conversation we had and the ongoing conversations we have had something to do with the physicality. It had something to do with the ramifications of having sex, one being children, one being STDs. But we also had the conversation on the emotional aspects of sex and the difference of the emotional aspect coming from the male perspective or the male participant compared to the female participant. And if you remember that conversation, which we've had it more than one time, can you enlighten the people on how that portion of the conversation went as far as the first time you have sex for a guy compared to the first time you have sex for a girl?
So I know that we talked about that it's very different between the two. This one helped me out a little bit with it, but for a guy, it's gonna be more transactional a little bit. But for a girl, it's gonna be more emotions involved. And hold on, put that down so I can think. I don't want to say that a guy won't have as much emotions, but it's just gonna be different, and I can't fully explain the difference because I ain't never done the difference, so I don't know. I haven't experienced it myself per se, but I just remember us talking about like, I don't know, it's gonna affect me way differently than it affects a guy. Kind of like, oh, I did a thing.
Okay, so let me fill in the blanks for everybody out there. For a guy, it's an event. For the most part, it's an event. It's a milestone. It's what do you want to call it? A trek to manhood. But
Yeah,
for you say what?
I don't want to say like it off of a list because it make it seem like insensitive.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of is a little bit.
Yay and nay. It's just an event. Like you ask the question to your fellas, that's questions that fellas ask themselves, have you experienced sex before? And you don't necessarily want to be that dude that says no, which it's okay, everybody. It's okay for a guy not to be sexually active. It's cool. It's okay. It's not a problem. But those are pressures that men face. And it's like, okay, I scratched that one off. That's an experience that I've had. And that's what it is. You don't have to be in love with the girl that you experience sex with for the first time for it to matter. You just want to experience it. And if you ask the average, let's go with the age of 18. Let's say boys lose their virginity at the age of 16. Ask them after they've lost their virginity, would they go back to being a virgin? The overwhelming majority of boys would probably say no. It's not going to hurt them. It shouldn't. I don't think it should hurt them. But it was just an event for a female to go ahead and decide to give a young female to give herself to a boy, probably some emotion involved in it, that she really, really cares about this boy and she hopes and prays that he cares about her the same way. But it's not guaranteed that it'll be that way. But ask that girl, the 18-year-old girl, if she had it to do all over again, would she still do it? Would she go back to being a virgin? Most will probably say yes, because in my experience, anytime a woman gets into a relationship with a man, she would love to be able to give him something that she's never given anybody else. And once you get into the sexual game, nobody else can deflower you. It's only one human being that will have that opportunity to deflower you, that say, I'm the first. And women tend to not forget who their first sexual experience is, but there are instances where guys don't remember who their first sexual experience is. So that's something I think girls need to know when they get into this game. It'll mean something to you that it does not mean to him. It doesn't make him lesser of a person than you are, less of a human. It's just the fact that men operate differently than women. They've said before, or I've heard before, that men get into relationships to have sex, and women have sex to get into relationships. And there is some truth to that, starting from the gate. It's guys pressuring girls to have sex. It's normally not the other way around, where girls are pressuring guys to have sex. It does happen, but in most cases, it's guys pressuring girls. What has our continuing talk on sex, what has that done for you as far as you processing the concept of sex, and how has that formed your opinion and or actions?
It made me think about it in a way that was more than just physical. Because like, if I'm asking my friends and my peers, the people my age, they can tell me what the physicalities of it is, and like, oh, you do this, you do that. But they can't tell me the emotional stance behind it, or like the emotional connection or spiritual connection behind it. And for a long time, I feel like I've abstained from it because I wanted to prepare myself for the emotional consequence, rather it be good or rather it be bad, before I decide to mix and mingle and to literally connect myself or attach myself to somebody else. Those conversations made me want to learn myself first before I put somebody else in my mix. Because for me, especially the way I think and the way that I would like to see myself in life, as far as like a family and like procreating, having my own children, there's an image that, or not even a certain image, there's a certain lifestyle that I like. If there's a certain partner that I'd like to attract, and there's a certain partner that I'd like to be, and with that all being in mind, I just wanted to make sure that I was ready and whole within myself before I start doing things that could consequently the pregnancy, could lead to emotions that I might not be ready for. It can lead to so much more. So I just wanted to make sure that I was prepared for the reaction to my before I go off and do anything, if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely makes sense to me, because there is a reaction to the action. There'll always be a reaction to the action. Even if there's no reaction, that's still a reaction to the action. But I always wanted you to know all of the different levels that introducing that physicality could be. You have the physical aspect, you have the emotional aspect, the possibility of children, the possibility of sexually transmitted diseases or infections, all those things I wanted you to know. So even within our discussions, I felt it important I don't think I ever told you don't get pregnant. I don't think I've ever said that to you. Because what does that even mean, to don't get pregnant? What does that mean? But I know I've had implicit conversation with you on how not to get pregnant. I don't think I've ever put the expectation on you of wedlock and pregnancy.
Mm-mm.
I never put that on you, because that's up to you. It's not up to me. But so many times we do say, don't do this, don't do that. But specifically, we don't give the instructions on how not to do it. But just because you're not getting pregnant doesn't mean you're not introducing lifelong things into your world. Because they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but STDs come home. They come home. Um, and you know, so we've definitely had conversations on how not to come up with a baby. And you've expressed to me openly and honestly what you did want to do to what you did want to do and what you did not want to do in regards to with your body as far as fertility goes, right?
You can say
Not
it.
have, well, you say it.
Talking about birth control and stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Oh yeah. I don't like that stuff.
Okay. So when you told me that you didn't want to use birth control, I said, cool. But you have to be extra careful on how you go about having sex.
Right.
Because there are people around you that have had babies, including me and your mama. Because if we didn't have a baby, you wouldn't be here. But even with that, there has to be an understanding between you and your partner as far as the consequences, ramifications, everything that's going on. You have to be on accord. You have to have these conversations with anybody you decide you want to be physical with. What happens if I get a baby, if we make a baby? What happens, you know, if as far as you stepping outside of this relationship, you can bring something back home. All those things, you know, you got to respect the relationship and everything else, but all those things are a part of this wonderful thing that we call sex. And why am I your father?
Because you made a baby.
No, I mean, but we had this conversation before, but why am I your father?
Because you asked for me.
And when you say I asked for you, what do you mean I asked for you?
Ask my mama. Will she have me?
Right. So being that I did ask your mother to have you as a child, that definitely meant I was aware of what I was doing and I was prepared one way, shape, form, or fashion to take care of the responsibility that I requested to take to have. And my beautiful grandmother, which today is her birthday, so happy birthday, Grandma Louise. Also her child, which is my mother, they put it to me in a, you said what? But you're doing the math? You're doing the math? Did you
Like,
carry the one?
I know them.
Yeah, okay. So they put it in the manner in which I will not put it on this particular program. On my own program, I would put it the way they put it, but I'm not going to do it in this particular manner. But basically, what my grandmother said to my mother, which said to me, which I in turn said it to Kelsey, and I said it to her the way they said it to me. He asked for sex. He didn't ask for a baby. So those things need to be talked about. Those things need to be clarified. Like, okay, so you say you want to take the condom off. Okay, well, you do realize this is a consequence of taking the condom off, and this could result in a child. Or you say you want to do this, you don't want to do that. These are all the ramifications and consequences of what it is that you want to do. Those conversations need to be had, and they need to be had before you decide to get off into the game. I need to tell you the entire game, the good, bad, the indifferent, before you decide to get off into this game. Do I pull any punches with you on these conversations? Right. We get down to the nit and the grit because I always told you I need you to be prepared when you get out here in this game. Because once you start, ain't no stopping. It's like it's like a clock. Once you start, it ain't no timeout. So you can't go backwards. So you just have to know how to handle yourself in all situations, or be as prepared as possible. But that's one of the reasons why I've never, ever, ever, ever had a problem with being your father, like actively being your father, actively being your little brother's father, because those are children that I asked for. How do you necessarily expect a person to be responsible for something that they didn't request? All they want to do is have some fun. But you need to be able to explain to whomever's trying to have fun with you is this ain't no game over here. What is that?
It's a towel for your hair, like a turban.
Okay. It looked weird. It looked like a real short, iron board cover.
I'm cute.
Of course, you're beautiful. My baby's always beautiful. But yeah, I mean, and everybody, we have like extremely open conversations in regards to the subject of sex. Super open conversations. Sometimes I would probably, speaking for my daughter, it may just be, it might be super, I guess when we first start having these conversations, it was probably awkward for you. Like, man, my dad's kind of raw with this. But as time progressed and you got to know me better, it was like, okay, I get where he's coming from. But my ultimate goal is for you to be prepared. I don't think that you should be learning anything from somebody else. Not along those lines. That's my job to teach you. So if I am a little brash in the way I teach it, so be it, because it's going to be every bit as brash. What's that?
Some kids.
The reality of the situation is going to be every bit as brash as you think I'm giving it to you. It's going to be more so in the real world. So I'm going to turn it back over to you and let you talk.
I guess if I'm going to advise from the standpoint, as far as how to start this conversation, especially when you, I would say, late teens to 22, because I can't talk no further past 22, I'm only 22. How to start those conversations, it's so awkward at first. It's like, how do I ask the guy who I need to know that I'm just like, I'm the princess and I'm just as innocent as they come, even though we know that that's first true. I don't be out here freestyling or nothing, but I just want my daddy to think I'm innocent for the rest of my life. How do I ask this question? Because I desperately want an answer, but I don't really know the words just yet. I don't know how, is he gonna blow his top today, or is he gonna be like, oh well, let's just talk about it. And so I'm gonna be honest, this is my step. This how I came to, even on different stuff, this is how I became to be more open. I always check the temperature. I ask a question that I really don't really care for the answer, just to see where his mindset is, because it just or to see where his standpoint is at the moment, because it just makes me feel my conscience just is a little more clear, and it makes me more confident in my approach. And I'll just be like, oh, hey, how's the weather there? And if you're like, yeah, then I go ahead and ask my question, you know. And that was just to begin with, and not everybody probably would take that standpoint or that plight, but that's how I started to become more comfortable. And then once I did get comfortable, I would just ask anyway. No matter what I would get from it, and a lot of times it would be a positive response. It's rare that, especially now in this point in our relationship, it's rare that I would get any pushback. But I would ask the question anyway and just hope for the best. And if it kind of goes downhill, I can put a pause on this and we can come back to it. But I always made sure I came back to it, because one, I still need my answer. I'm still curious. I'm still searching for something. And who better to get it from than from my father, especially with this particular conversation. And even on those times when I didn't have the words, like our most recent conversation, kind of what we were alluding to in episode 1, I didn't even know what I wanted. I knew what I wanted to ask, but I didn't know how to ask it. So I just prefaced it like, hey, Dad, I want to ask you something. I don't really know how I'm going to ask, but I'm going to just keep talking until the words come out right. And him as the father, he listened to what it was that I was asking. He listened, and then he started to ask questions. And his questions made me think like, that's it. That's what I'm trying to ask. Like you on to something. So I would say, as a child, give your parents grace. Let them, don't be so defensive all the time and try to hurry up and guess what it is that they're going to say. Let them answer. Fully listen to what it is that they're trying to say, and don't back out because you think you need to know exactly what it is that you're trying to ask. or don't back out because you're hesitant on what the answer is. Let it be what it may. Sometimes you may have to pause that conversation. Sometimes you might have to pick that back up later, or sometimes you might not even have the words, but trust me, their experience is a lot greater than yours, and they'll help you find those words. And sometimes you do gotta take that maybe step into the conversation, but at the end of the day, it's something that needs to be had. And with with your constant effort as well as their constant effort, it gets normal. It gets to where you can sit on the couch, fold your clothes, and record for everyone else to see. And it just you don't have no effect on it. It's just a normal conversation. This is what we do on the day to day. But sometimes it takes a little minute to get to that topic. But I would definitely say keep asking questions, keep being curious, and keep trying to involve the parent, both mom and dad. It definitely gets easier, and eventually you'll find the words for the questions that you want to ask. And more than likely, they're going to have some answers for you. Better than any other answer get out here in these streets, because these kids my age don't be doing nothing.
And that's the point of my desire to communicate with you openly, because you're going to learn anyway. I learned, and everybody learns. You learn you're going to learn what's out there, but how are you going to go about doing it? Again, I've always told you, I don't want you out here seeking love, seeking knowledge that was supposed to come from me. There's far too many young women out here seeking for fatherly love in the streets. You should get that fatherly love from your father. Now, there is a whole different level of love, which you and I have had a brief conversation about that. And I can't provide that, but I can prepare you for it, i.e., how are you to be treated as a woman? And what's acceptable? Go ahead.
And teaching me how me as a woman can treat a man too.
Exactly. I've always taught you not to fit in, but to stand out, to separate yourself from the herd. Don't allow a man to treat you a certain type of way, but at the same time, respect him treating you as a queen, a princess. Treat him like a prince or a king. You know, if I open the door for you, then what are you to do as I walk around to the other side of the car?
Lock it and open it from the inside.
Exactly. That separates you from everybody else. And if you're separated from everybody else, then that's probably going to have him view you as something different, someone special. So he can't treat you the same way that he treats everybody else. Because if he treats you the same way he treats everybody else, then my friend, you may as well go ahead and be with everybody else, because you can't be with me. I'm different. I demand an individual respect. You know, I demand respect as a person, but I also demand respect as an individual. And that's everything. You know, you can't just show up and expect to just get my everything. No, it's for a special person. And if you're not willing to be special, then you can be gone. And I'm dead set on that. This is non-negotiable in regards to how I feel. And it was important. It's super duper important to me that you understand this. Is there a difference in my son? Probably. Is it a double standard? Probably. But there's also different ramifications when it comes down to it. You got to walk that walk. He can just walk alongside. And that's if he chooses to. Once it happens to you, there's no choice in the matter for you. You can't choose to be pregnant, but I'm going to act like I'm not. You can act all you want to, but you're pregnant. You'll wake up sick in the morning, or baby acting a fool inside your body. Your body will change due to pregnancy. His probably won't. But he and I still have conversations on what this is. First off, Uh, I ain't ready to be no dang on grandfather. I'm not. But if I became a grandfather, I'm still going to love my child, and I'm still going to love my grandchild. You and I have had that conversation. Okay, this is what you said you want to do. But if you should happen to get pregnant and have a baby, that's my grandchild, and together we're going to make it through it. So even though we've set the game plan, set the path on how you wanted to live your life, I've always made you aware of the fact that don't ever run away from me because you think you disappointed me or anything along those lines, because when it's all said and done, I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to be there for my grandchild, and we're going to make the best of whatever. Now, would it be optimum to have it in a situation where you're in a full-fledged relationship, up to and including marriage, career, and everything else in tow, to where you're physically able, financially able, spiritually able, and just stable all the way around to have an atmosphere, an environment that's conducive to rearing a child? Yeah, but it all starts with a decision, and that decision should be based on an education. And it's my job to educate you on what you'd be entering if you decide to be physical. If you decide to be physical, when you decide to be physical, and with whom you should be physical, and how should you go about being physical.
And I think that education from both you and my mom has helped me kind of learn what it is that I want. What is it myself? Where do I see myself as it pertains to the sex talk? And how shall I hold myself to make sure that I get where it is that I want? Do I think right now, as it stands, I could keep a child alive? Absolutely. Do I think that I would struggle the basics? I know how to feed kid, baby kid. I can do that. I can do the basics, but I didn't get basics coming up. I got extraordinary. Y'all struggle too, but I don't want to just because I can go out there and do stuff like, oh yeah, I can keep the kid alive, I can care for the kid, because there's so much more to it than just keeping the kid alive. What am I going to put into this child, let alone put on this child money-wise and things like that? And also, I'm very interested in who Kelsey is and who Kelsey is becoming. Adding a mommy title to that will just confuse things for me, and I would rather not at this moment in time. But it wasn't the don't have a baby that made my mindset this way. It was the how not to have a baby, or how to go about things in the education just around sex and all that it encompasses, that made me think like this. And for that, I'm very appreciative of, because like I said, I could keep a kid alive. I just rather not right now. And I have bigger aspirations for myself and for who I would like to be as a mother. And right now, I ain't there yet, so I ain't trying to even throw that in the mix.
I agree. And that was my intent. I was not focused on what I put on your back. I wasn't necessarily focused on what I put in your belly, which I probably should have been more. I should have been better about that, but the education came to me a little bit later in regards to that. But I was always intent on what I put into your head from day one. I was always intent about that. How am I going to build this child? And that, to a certain extent, that's kind of how I looked at rearing you, is building you, like literally building you up, which we talked about briefly in the first episode. Did you think I was mean as a father? As a kid? Did you think I was tough?
Tough, yeah. Not mean tough.
And I've always told people there's three things you don't want me to be. It's a parent, a coach, and a teacher, because I'm going to be super tough. And I saw, let's say, your potential early. But I also had a vision for what I wanted of my daughter. So that set me on a path of how I was going to build you. I knew that I had to give detailed instructions, be consistent with my lessons, and I had faith that eventually it would land, it would hit its intended mark. And I, for one, as a dad, I'm extremely proud of who you are. I thought it was always important to not just tell you that I love you, but show you that I love you. And as you got to know me better, I believe you began to see my methodology was based out of love. And my dad's tough and everything else, just wish he would just let up on me. And I remember specifically when you began to get your voice, you told me, Dad, everything is not a teachable opportunity. And I said, to hell if it's not. As long as I have breath in my lungs, it'll be a teachable moment. And I still teach you all the time, but it just doesn't come across as a lesson as much as it used to, I would probably guess. Because I don't have to teach you the same way. I can just tell you something. It's I think the beautiful thing about our conversations now, they're conversations. Yeah, I don't think you feel anymore that I'm talking at you.
Yeah.
I think you felt like I was talking at you when you were younger. And that was never the case. But as you got to know me better, it just became a conversation. And we can have these difficult, talk about these difficult topics just in the form of conversation. And that helps. That helps the communication. It makes it easier. It makes it easier as a parent, and hopefully it makes it easier as a child or as a student. Hopefully these videos that we're putting out can make it easier for the next parent, or make it easier for the next child to communicate with one another. And I think overall that's our purpose in doing these videos. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
I guess to add,
coronavirus.
When, like how you said, kind of went from actional to conversational, and became conversational, it was so much more easy to digest. It was so more easy to listen, to understand. It was so much more easy to trust. Not that, but I was so like, oh, here you go with another lesson again. Somebody get this man an apple because he swear he a teacher. Like every time, here he go. Oh, Lord,
I am a teacher. I'm not down. I'm just going to give me some concoction.
I thought was needing some water, but I didn't want to. Just a lot more. The biggest key to that, or what was most responsible for that transaction, was communicating and putting in the work to learn one another.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that he's not chatting, and I also learned not as frantic or like defensive when he's a certain way. And from there, it was just like any other conversation. And so my suggestion for people out there, whether you have kids my age or you have kids younger, learn who that child is, and give them this to learn just who you are. Because when you do conversations like this that we all dread, or they're like, not again, become more digestible and they last longer. It's not one in one other. They're not storing for a rainy day, and on that rainy day now, oh snaps, I need to learn all of this right now. I got 5 minutes to remember what it is that they were talking about. They actually retain it. And that's about it.
Okay. So with that, we're going to wrap this episode up. Again, everybody, feel free to enjoy. Don't forget to like. Please comment. We are dependent upon comments to let us know how we're doing, what we need to do differently. Share your stories with us. If you'd like for us to tell your story, we'd be more than happy to do so. But most importantly, subscribe and share. Most importantly, subscribe and share. And
put it on all, not personalized. Because you never know when we're going to pop up on your screen, okay?
Exactly.
Well, we'll see y'all.
So that's been, well, go ahead.
I said, we'll see y'all on the flip.
On the flip. Peace.
Oh.
Daddy Daughter Talks out.